the theory of impeachment keeps changing. So back on Thursday and Friday, the theory of impeachment seemed to still be sort of that President Trump had engaged in a quid pro quo with the Ukrainian government in which he basically threatened to withhold aid, American aid, military aid to Ukraine in exchange for the Ukrainian government checking out his chief domestic political opponent, Joe Biden. Well, as it turns out, over the past couple of days, it appears, and I'm just catching up on the news, it appears that the theory of impeachment is now changing. It is malleable. That Democrats weren't able to come up with the quid pro quo they were seeking on the specific transcript of this phone call that Trump had with Ukraine. And so now they are attempting to construct another impeachment-based crime, and that would be obstruction of justice. They are trying to come up with some rationale why they can blame the Trump administration for blocking the investigation. Now, it doesn't matter that the Trump administration turned over the transcript. Doesn't matter they turned over the whistleblower report. Doesn't matter that the witnesses who have been requested by the House thus far have basically been scheduled, so far as I can tell, including the former ambassador to Ukraine, as well as other officials, American officials from the State Department who are active in Ukraine. Still, the Democrats are pushing forward with the idea that if we can't get them for the underlying crime, we'll get President Trump for obstruction. That seems to be one angle. And then there's the generalized Democratic angle, and you can see this happening in the press, which is that impeachment isn't truly about what Trump did here. Impeachment isn't truly about any specific criminal allegation. Impeachment is about Trump being a poo-poo head. That really seems to, that's the case. And as we'll see today, the Democrats keep broadening out the case. So we are now seeing them begin to speak with more and more wild language about what a bad guy Trump is. Well, Trump may be a bad guy, according to Democrats. That is not an impeachable offense. Being somebody that people don't like, being somebody who acts in ways you don't like, that's not impeachable. I didn't like Barack Obama. That dude was not impeached. Okay, Bill Clinton was impeached, but that was for a specific crime. That was not because people didn't like his tax policy in 1994. We had an election to fix his tax policy in 1994. So as we will see, as the impeachment proceeding moves forward, it seems less like Democrats are honing in on any one theory of impeachment and then getting to the heart of it. It seems instead that, like an octopus, the tentacles are just reaching out in every direction, and hopefully they can snag something that will be sufficient to move the public so that the public isn't anti-impeachment and it doesn't blow back on Democrats. Okay, so along those lines today, the media are making a very big deal out of the fact that Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, has now confirmed that he listened to President Trump's call with the Ukrainian president, which isn't a big surprise. There were a lot of people who are listening to that phone call. The Secretary of State very often frequently listens to phone calls that the president has with foreign leaders. But this was the first time that Pompeo had openly acknowledged that that is something that happened. Before, he had been asked about the whistleblower complaint. He said, I never saw the whistleblower complaint, so I have no specific answers about the whistleblower complaint. But he never said that he was on the call itself. So Democrats, of course, are jumping to, well, this means that it was a cover-up. This means that it was a cover-up. Except that it's not a cover-up since he just said it. He just, the Democrats keep doing this. They did it with Mueller. They did it with the whistleblower. They did it with the transcript of the phone call, and now they're doing it with Pompeo. They keep claiming that there is a cover-up right about the point when the Trump administration blows the whole thing into public view. Right, so here's Pompeo explaining, yes, I was on the phone call with Ukraine.
I was on the phone call. The phone call was in the context of, now I guess I've been the Secretary of State for coming on a year and a half. I know precisely what the American policy is with respect to Ukraine. It's been remarkably consistent, and we will continue to try to drive those set of outcomes. It's what our team, including Ambassador Volker, were focused on, was taking down the threat that Russia poses there in Ukraine.
Okay, so he was immediately asked, of course, whether Trump did anything inappropriate on the call, and he demurred to answer that question. He just declined to answer the question. Why? Well, because the fact is that the president could have done things that are inappropriate but not impeachable, but the fact is that Pompeo also works for Trump. Trump is particularly thin-skinned when it comes to this sort of stuff. He doesn't like when his own officials are out there saying that he does stuff that they don't approve of. This is what happened to John Bolton, and Mike Pompeo isn't about to fall into that trap. Okay, so this follows hard on the Democrats claiming over the past 48 hours that Pompeo is somehow holding up their access to State Department officials. So the New York Times reported yesterday the Trump administration clashed on Tuesday with leaders of the House impeachment inquiry over their demands to question State Department officials who might have witnessed President Trump's efforts to pressure Ukraine for political advantage. Now, notice again that the language here used by the New York Times, and it's been used consistently by the media now, is that Trump was pressuring Ukraine as opposed to requesting Ukraine, which is a more accurate description of that phone call. pressuring Ukraine would presume, that assumes the question that is in doubt. The question in doubt is whether there was a quid pro quo, right? Not whether Trump asked for something, but whether there was a quid pro quo. When you use the word pressured, the assumption is that there is something credible on the other end of that pressure, namely a threat. So you notice the word pressure, whenever the media use the word pressure and not the word requested or asked, then that is the media infusing their own bias into a story. In any case, the New York Times says, in the first skirmish in what promises to be an epic impeachment struggle between the executive and legislative branches, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo lashed out at 3 congressional committees that are seeking to depose diplomats involved in American policy toward Ukraine. Mr. Pompeo called their demands for confidential interviews an act of intimidation. Now, the reason that he says that is because he is saying you're not giving them time to get lawyers and deal with State Department lawyers, which, by the way, if that sounds like somebody covering up or somebody covering their butt, let me assure you, I know people who were questioned by the Mueller report, because I know a lot of folks inside the administration. I know people who were questioned by the Mueller report. It cost them tens of thousands of dollars with lawyers in order to be questioned, because anybody who goes and is questioned by a government committee under oath without a lawyer present at their side to advise them on what they should and should not say is a fool. You would be a fool too, and that has nothing to do with truth-telling or not truth-telling. It's like going to deal with the IRS without any lawyer on the line. Like, doing that is a fool's errand. They're literally putting you there so that they can then charge you with some form of perjury or misleading statement, and then they can use that to pressure you to say things you don't want to say. Pompeo is saying, okay, we need time to get all these people the lawyers that they want. And the Democrats, naturally, because they are attempting to gin up some sort of belief that there is a cover-up going on, they are saying that Pompeo is engaged in the cover-up. When again, the 2 biggest officials who are being questioned so far have already set dates on which they are to be questioned. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.